Welcome to today's webinar, exploring which digital strategies can help landlords to improve their tenant satisfaction measures. This event, sponsored by Quadient, is very much focused on one of the most significant regulatory changes facing social landlords in England over the next 12 months. Before I hand over to our speakers today, here's a little bit of background just to help set up the scene for today's discussion and presentations. Since April, social landlords have started to collect data on the 22 tenant satisfaction measures that they are required to submit to the regulator of social housing in England. 10 of these are measured by landlords directly. Those are, for example, numbers of repairs they complete within target timescales or gas safety checks. But the rest of the measures of tenant perceptions, covering things such as repairs, tenant engagement and complaint handling. There's been much debate about methods of collection so far, with different methodologies such as how often and when data is collected, or whether a collection is done by phone, online or in person. Those methodologies potentially producing quite different results. Today's event will discuss what landlords' digital strategies should look like in this brave new world. And we'll also be asking how they can deliver both useful data but also what approaches can help meaningfully raise performance and TSM scores. I think everybody knows that early indications are that some of the early scores aren't going to be particularly high, but if that's a reflection of where people are, what can be meaningfully done to help raise those levels. And it's difficult to think about a more important issue for social landlords to be getting right. We all know the background as to why we've got where we are today, and why that consumer regulation regime has changed. To inform the discussion, give us their insight today, we'll be hearing from Ian Johnson, Executive Director of Customer Services at Carbon Homes, Anthony Paul, Head of Global Marketing with Quadient, Joe Kelly, Corporate Director of Customer Strategy and Digital Channels, the London Borough of Waltham Forest, and Barbara Marsh, Housing Services Director, Eastlight Community Homes. Before I start, well, a couple of things. Just a reminder to you that tuning in, that this is your opportunity to ask the practical questions that will help you with the issues you're wrestling with in your own organisations. So please do use the question and answer box attached throughout, and we'll get through as many of your questions as possible as we go along. And we've also got a poll for you, just to kind of get a bit of a feel for where you all are today. So we'll just publish the poll now. So yeah, that should be popping up on your screens now. So if you can just take a look at that poll, and so it's thinking about how your organisation communicates with residents. How would you rate it? And all the usual options are there: excellent, good, average, okay, I don't know, and I'm sure there's some other options, but that you can think of. But this is just to give us a bit of an indication about people in the room really today. So it's not nothing too scientific, but just to give us a bit of a feel about whether you're the kind of feel you're the excellent end of things, or the more towards that okay end. So we'll just give you a few more seconds to click through there, and yeah, we'll now gather those poll results and see where we are. So yeah, a few percent are in that kind of excellent category. Good quarter side of things. Average, probably the majority of 45% in the average category. Okay, yeah, just under 20% there. And then of course the usual smattering of don't knows. So a bit of a mix there, but yeah, certainly I think this is probably reflective of where the sector finds itself in that kind of average and learning category. So yeah, good to just inform the discussion today. So thank you very much for taking part in that. Right, that is more than enough from me. Let's get this thing underway properly, and I will now hand over to Ian. So Ian, welcome, and it's over to you.
Thank you, Mon. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to just spend a few moments talking about our approach to digital information management and how it interacts with the tenant satisfaction measures. We are on a time today of only 8 minutes, so I'm going to skim through the first few slides, which obviously that's me, that's who I am. And this is Carbon. We are based in the northeast in Yorkshire, and that's our 3 strategic aims around good quality homes, to deliver excellent customer services, and to provide strong and sustainable places for our communities. That's where we operate geographically, so we stretch from the borders into Scotland right down to South Yorkshire now in Humberside and across to the west as well. So about 32,000 homes, lots of diverse communities and a big footprint. We've spent a lot of time recently talking about data decision in terms of how we improve the quality of our data, how we collect it, but enabling colleagues to report and self-serve and have a range of tools that provides some degree of insight. And we've also used some emerging technologies and AI to improve customer interaction, which I'll touch on in a moment. This is our way of demonstrating our data collection and how we use it. And obviously our vision is to have great quality data underpinned and also making good decisions and improving our service delivery as a result of that. And a lot of this is not just about the collection of data and systems and processes, but also about the culture within the organisation of valuing data, seen as an asset, using it well, making sure it's properly recorded and stored and used for correct purposes. And the data that we collect is of high and sufficient quality to enable all of those things to happen. So that's just a visual demonstration of our approach. So this is a visualization of how we try and put together the story around our data. So for those of you who have got children or come across Lego and it's lying about on the floor, it hurts a lot when you stand on it. So the first point is just this huge pile of information that you've got, but it doesn't make any sense. It's not collected together and it doesn't build and tell a story. And then obviously right through to where we want to be, which is utopia around 4 and 5, which would be having an ability to analyze that data, make sense of it, and then tell a story from it. If I'm being really honest, I think we sort of veer between 1 and 3 at the minute, and depends on what topic we're on, about where we are on that journey. We are very much trying to move from 3 to 4, where we can have a better visualization of that data, but then really make some analysis of it, provide some insight and information for colleagues to act upon, and then ultimately be able to tell that story out there with customers and really make sense of all that information hanging together and making a difference, which is where it really matters on the front line. But yeah, that's how we see our journey moving on, and it's our analysis at the minute is somewhere between sort of steps 1 and 3, but depends on what data group we're talking about and what topic we're on. So we have done a lot to improve, and I'm sure this will be familiar with many colleagues listening today. So we've now got things called a data lake, which is mainly putting things in the cloud and having that infrastructure in place to make sure that we've got that information stored correctly. We've improved our standards, so we've now got data quality scorecards for every subject, so we know what our levels of confidence are around our data, what's missing, how many records are missing, what needs to be closed. And we've done a huge amount, like many colleagues will have done, on cyber resilience to make sure that we are fighting off any threats that we're faced with and making sure our data is protected. We've also got thousands and thousands of house files, which are on paper and paper records. We're now in a process now of digitizing all of those and making them readily available to colleagues on their devices while they're out and about in neighbourhoods. That would be a long and costly process, but one that's absolutely crucial. I talked a few moments ago about culture. We've done a huge amount around colleague awareness. We've got a series of comms campaigns running, training sessions online and in person around data, the culture we want from data, its necessity to protect it, and all the legal implications of not doing so. So there is a huge piece around this with colleagues to make sure that awareness is raised right across the organisation. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with Power BI tools, so people can go and self-serve, they can interrogate data, they can drill down even further, and all of that's on a self-serve basis. So again, making more people in the organisation capable of accessing and analysing data and using it to its best effect. So in terms of some of the outcomes that we've used, and I think this is probably where it's useful for a lot of colleagues, we've used a couple of VI tools. So one is Mobisoft's Repair Sense, and this is used to deal with repeat repair requests from customers. So where similar or same words are used repeatedly by customers within a certain time frame to report the same issue, we can then go and intervene and do something different to cease that from continuing. So there has been examples when we've gone back through the records of seeing customers report the same thing 8 or 9 times, but it might be described in different ways or presented in different ways. And we then send a colleague along who's got whatever time is required to go and resolve that complaint or query. So far we've saved about 3,200 repairs, which equates to just over $500,000 in costs. And obviously you can't put your hands on those costs, but what it does do is hopefully lead to greater satisfaction from customers because they're no longer having to repeatedly report the same issue. We've also launched VoiceScape for income management, and this is predominantly focused so far on former tenant arrears, which has shown some great success. And we're on the verge of introducing it for gas service and appointments and current tenant arrears. So again, that's been very well received by colleagues and customers. It's much more interactive, and it has saved a huge amount of human interactions that otherwise would have had to take place and would have taken a lot longer. On a positive note, we are achieving up a quartile on tenant perception surveys, and our digital channels through My Carbon, which is our customer portal, and the IVR is ever increasing, and they're producing some good results, which the next slide shows. Just flick over to the next slide. Yeah, so overall perception with the services and satisfaction that we produce is up a quartile, and we're up a quartile for ICS accreditation as well. So we've managed to withhold a good, strong performance in terms of that. Well, that also correlates with our digital contact, which has gone up ever more, just like I said, just short of 38%. There has been some sort of observations recently that organisations with high digital contact might be risking overall satisfaction, but we aren't seeing that so far. So we've been really sort of pleased and satisfied with the difference this has made, but recognising there's still a long, long way to go in terms of our digital interactions with customers. We've got to do a lot more on pure self-serve. So at the minute, some of our digital contact does result in a colleague having to do something behind the scenes. We want to improve that even further. But alongside lots of work we're doing in terms of our neighbourhood model, we are seeing a strong correlation with satisfaction. So customers still feel connected to us. We are able to resolve their issues in person, particularly if they're complex or difficult, but also hopefully providing ever-improving digital interaction. And all of that sort of leads back to improved tenant satisfaction measured results, of which have been pretty promising so far for us. But there's still a long way to go because it's only the first set of results. So I'm happy to take any questions in later on, which I'm sure Martin will cover, but that's the sort of journey Carbon's been on so far, and long way to go yet.
Thank you very much. Yeah, lots to pick up on there, yeah, to get into as part of the question and answers that follow. Yeah, thanks for a really interesting presentation there, and a great start to the event. On that note, just a reminder to everybody tuning in that this is definitely your opportunity to ask questions that are going to be useful to you. I know we've got some coming in already, and please do make use of that question and answer box, and yeah, get your questions for the panel coming in, and we'll address them once the presentations are concluded. So thanks very much, Ian, and Anthony, welcome, and it's over to you.
Okay. It's very rare I say this, but I hope everyone can see me. I should be there. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anthony Paul from Quadient, and really my contribution today is to focus on using digital strategies and transformation to Well, positively impact specific tenant satisfaction measures or TSMs. If we could just move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So my session today is really divided into 4 parts. Firstly, I'm going to give a brief introduction to Quadient to kind of set the scene into the market spaces in which we operate, and more importantly, where we can help organisations to improve existing processes. We'll then focus on a couple of key elements of the TSMs before taking a closer look as to how tenant engagement can be improved, while simultaneously creating greater process efficiencies in re-engineering of processes. I'll conclude with some considerations and practical steps that can be taken to make these improvements, and I'll also leave you with some things to think about for any organisation looking to transform and adopt digital strategies for improving tenant communications and satisfaction. If we can move on again, please. So I guess to begin with, a little introduction. Who exactly is Quadient? Well, one thing about the company is that we have longevity. In fact, next year, we'll actually be celebrating our 100th anniversary, something we're immensely proud of as an organisation. We actually focus in 3 main business areas: mail-related solutions, parcel locker solutions, and the piece that's most relevant today, intelligent communication automation. The company has had annual revenues of around about 1.4 billion euros, with more than 550,000 customers around the world, served and supported by 6,000 employees. Now, this slide highlights some of our corporate credentials, but for me, the most important takeaway is that for 99 years, we've been helping organisations better connect with their stakeholders by utilising our technologies. I should add, just to be clear, I've not been involved for all of that 99 years, just in case you were wondering. So let's move into the bulk of the content itself by moving on the slides, please. So earlier in the session, Martin really took you through an introduction to the tenant satisfaction measures. The TSMs are divided into 5 categories that you can see on the slide here. And within that, there are 22 individual measures of satisfaction that Martin measured. For today, I'd really like to focus on 2 that are probably the most pertinent to tenant engagement, which are TP07 and CH02. As you can see, these 2 relate specifically to satisfaction, that the landlord keeps tenants informed about things that matter to them, and that complaints are responded to within complaint handling guidelines, respectively. And as we move through the session, I'll provide insights as to, well, how this can be better achieved. And if we could move on again, please. So when we think about the 2 measures we introduced on the previous slide, we're really talking about communication. In best meeting the requirements of the TSMs, I thought I'd share with you some findings from a survey conducted by Keypoint Intelligence. This survey gives some interesting pointers as to the challenges that organisations commonly face in managing their communications and communication processes. Based on a market study in 2021, I can share here some examples of typical challenges. In the interest of time, I'll just highlight a few. So to start, we can see that 49% of organisations surveyed identified challenges in the speed of delivery, and that 47% have customers with expectations or preferences for postal communication. We can also see that 2/3 of the organisations are now sending more digital communications than traditional post, and I don't think anyone's going to be too surprised about that. But more interestingly, we can also learn that they're struggling to maintain consistency across channels and create enough impact. What these points are really telling us is that the communication processes can be inefficient, and that despite an inevitable drive to digital, traditional methods such as post still need to be part of the mix. We also see that managing communications in disparate ways across channels leads to a lack of consistency, and that's really where technology can help. And if we could move on again, please. So, having given some background information, what are the practicalities? Well, if we want to improve engagement and create efficiencies in our communications, we really need to think holistically. On this slide, I've highlighted areas that definitely should be part of your thought process. And to expand on just a few, personalisation of delivery channel and content are increasingly important. Expectations about the speed of delivery are also increasing, and providing tenants with easy and ongoing access to mandatory and crucial documents such as tenancy agreements, EPC certificates, EICR records, and inventories is a really good way to both add value and create better engagement. In thinking about streamlining processes, creating digital workflows, and reducing operating costs should all be significant considerations. And we should also think about our responsibilities from a data governance perspective. Poor or often paper-based communication processes can be a common source of error and potential data breaches, and such cases will do nothing to build engagement and trust with our tenants. Therefore, protecting tenant data through digital processes and workflows is vital. Now, you may be asking yourself, okay, thanks, Anthony, that's all interesting stuff, but what can we do about it? Well, the answer to that question really relates to technology. Many organisations try to manage all these different components, as we can see on the slide here, independently. Usually, this is not only complex and inefficient, but it's also likely to lead to being more costly and certainly higher risk factors. The alternative strategy is to consider adopting a communications platform. Here, organisations can manage all their communications in one place across multiple physical and digital channels. Tenants can identify their preferred channel, thus improving engagement. The platform can also be accessed from any connected location, which supports agile working and flexibility, which again are increasing requirements of organisations today. Tenants can additionally be assigned individual communications portals to maintain all documents and correspondence in one place for far easier access. And if we can move on once more, please. And I guess finally, to move forward, I'd like to share with you a high-level plan that we use with our customers to re-engineer processes and to really start the journey to improve engagement and greater efficiencies through digital strategies and transformation. Factors to include should also always include understanding all applications and capturing all the relevant documents that you need to transform. Selecting the right communications platform and centralizing production is pivotal to success. Ensure you capture your tenants' channel preferences and use those channels to create more rapid delivery and exceed their expectations. Now, if we relate all of these back to the two key measures we identified previously, migrating to an automated and digitized communications platform enables the landlord to maintain communications with tenants using their preferred channels simply and easily. This introduction of automation also helps to ensure compliance with measure CHO2, as delays in producing and sending updates to communications related to complaints are mitigated. Now, in our world, we've worked with many organisations in the housing and property management space to assist them on their individual transformation journeys. And if anyone here today has any specific interest in those areas, we'd be delighted to connect and share further insights about what was achieved. But in the meantime, thank you for your time and your attention, and I'll hand you back to Martin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really comprehensive presentation, and lots to kind of get our teeth into shortly with your questions. Plenty coming through during that presentation. So just a reminder, please do use that question and answer box. Like I say, there's lots coming through already. Please do get your questions in. I'll get through as many as possible in the discussion that follows the presentations. Thank you, Anthony, and Joe. Welcome. Good to see you. And the floor is yours. So over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I think, as Martin mentioned earlier, I'm the Corporate Director for Customer Strategy and Digital Channels at Waltham Forest Council in London. I guess we have people from across the country, and you may not necessarily know where Waltham Forest is. It's in the east of London. the East End, as they would say. I unfortunately do not have any slides to share with you, but I'll just tell you a little bit about our journey here at Tower Hamlet. Sorry, I just recently came here from Tower Hamlets, so apologies, here at Waltham Forest. And I think we're known as one of the leading London boroughs when it comes to the digital offer for residents. We have at least 80% of our residents doing self-serve in many of our service areas. And by self-serve, I mean they're able to transact with us online. And even though we have achieved that level of digital offer, we don't stand still as an organization, and we are currently in the process of reviewing our digital and data strategies, and of course, bringing in within that the new tenant satisfaction measures that we will all need to be applying going forward. So as I said, not standing still, for me, I think although we're achieving a lot, we still have some way to go. The ambitions are high, and we're aiming that what we want is for each and every one of our residents in our borough to be able to have the channel of choice. And ideally, that channel foremost would be digital. In saying that, however, as you can appreciate, as a borough, which is made up of many different types of residents, we do have to make sure that we actually offer the opportunity for people to be able to even transact with us face-to-face or by the telephone. So when we talk about that, we look at a more joined-up systems thinking approach, rather than just digital as it may seem. Because even the telephone system that we are again just about to refresh here, we'll be making sure that our telephone system and the interactive voice recognition systems that we are going to deploy will also be able to strengthen our digital offer. We'll be looking at emerging technologies such as robotics, as well as AI. AI in particular, I see the value of that when it comes to actually really delving into the inquiries that we get as a borough, not just for our housing tenants, but equally for all the other services that we have, that we offer for our residents. Because often what we miss sometimes is that we are not proactive enough in understanding our residents to avoid them going into certain types of disadvantages or crisis situation. So we're hoping that all these emerging technologies, as I said, will enable us to become more proactive. So as we move through our journey to actually transform and even improve from where we are in terms of our 80%, we will be making sure, of course, that we are still compliant. As a local authority, we have to make sure that our data is secure. We cannot just do things like many other organizations can do and take that risk. So for us, cybersecurity is vital. I don't think it's any secret that we have had government services as well as some local authorities being attacked. And therefore, for us, cybersecurity is very, very important. But whilst we do that, we also want to make it easy for our residents to be able to transact with us. We want to, wherever possible, we have personalization. We want people to feel that they are actually known to us and that we are here to support them. We'll be streamlining our services from that digital perspective, which will then enable us to be able to work more efficiently. But more importantly, along this journey, we are going to be taking a user-led approach. And by that, I mean, we are not going to be sitting in the back offices here doing the change that we want to further improve. We'll be getting our residents to inform us of what does good look like for them when it comes to offering a digital solution. We want them to be able to just tell us the issues once or the information once, again, feeding into our data controls and also our security systems. We don't want residents to be having their information going across multiple systems when it doesn't need to be, making sure, of course, it's aligned with our GDPR principles. But ultimately, we want to see how close can we get to that Amazon experience. And I always say that because I do feel that Amazon, if it's there, offering that digital offer across the world, as a local authority, what can we do to ensure that our residents are getting as close as possible to actually having that experience with us? So self-serve is going to be improved, but equally is for the resident also to have access to the information that we hold for them or on their behalf. So we want our data to be visible for our residents. We want them to be able to see where they are on their journey with us at any point in time. If someone has made an application for housing, where are they on that journey? What else would they need to do if they need to increase their opportunities of getting social housing with us if they can? So, as I said, for me, that is keeping it very simple, but equally getting it to a point that our residents will have the best experience. And that's really all I have to share with you today. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. I am not, and I should say from the outset, that I am not a housing specialist. So I'm sure my colleagues here will be the ones to answer your housing questions. I am more from a transformation, digital transformation, and residents' experience background. So thank you very much for your time. Back to you, Martin.
Thank you so much, Joe. Yeah, understood, and I think absolutely, because what we're talking about here very, very much, and yeah, really interesting the presentation is yeah, how you transform services, how you improve those scores, and by improving them, I mean genuinely improving tenant experience and improving scores that way. So yeah, that's absolutely part of the discussion today, and really valuable insight. We have got loads of questions coming through. Please do keep them coming in. Use that question and answer box. And again, just before we move to our final presentation, a reminder that this is absolutely your opportunity to get some answers to the issues you've been wrestling with, or help with the thinking that you're currently going through in your own organisation. So get those questions coming in, and we'll pick up on as many as possible in the discussion that follows. So thank you very much, Joe, and Barbara. Welcome, and I will now hand over to you.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Martin. Hello, everyone. Thanks for inviting me along today to speak. My name is Barbara Marsh. I'm the Housing Services Director at Eastlight Community Homes. Eastlight Community Homes is a housing association based in Essex, primarily in the east of England, about 12,500 homes. We were formed out of a merger between two housing associations, Greenfields and Cole, in 2020. So Eastlight is quite new as an organisation. I think in terms of the digital offer, I think it's fair to say that we're sort of at the beginning of our transformation journey in terms of moving towards improving our services to be digitally accessible to our residents. What I wanted to talk today about, and picking up really on Joe's point about meaningful resident engagement and how we gain more insight into the lives of our customers, is to touch on two areas of work. We have invested very heavily as a community gateway organisation in involving our residents. And over the past couple of years, we've been carrying out a number of different projects and activities to really drive through engagement. One of the projects that we carried out last year, which was led by Grand Union, another housing association, in partnership with other HAs in the east of England, was a research project focusing on customer insight, and it was called psychographic segmentation, where we carried out a survey of over 10% of our residents in October last year, and then the results, there was a lot of questions in the survey, and the results were compiled for us to give us these personas. If for those who aren't familiar with personas, it's just to try and get more meaningful information about our customers rather than just making certain assumptions because somebody is in a certain demographic because they're disabled or of a certain age that they have certain needs. So this gives us really rich insight into the lives of our customers, understanding how they engage and communicate with us. So, for example, 18% of our customers do prefer face-to-face and phone contact. And unsurprisingly, somewhere in the region of 80% have a preference for digital first. So obviously we'll be using that information to inform the way that we develop our digital strategy. But what it also gives us is very valuable insight into the fact that some of our customers will struggle to engage with us in a digital way, or will not be able to engage with certain services. So obviously transactional services such as repairs, rent collection, planned maintenance, may be more easily accessible via digital. But when it comes to more complex case management type activities such as ASB and safeguarding, only an element of that would be able to be delivered digitally. So we're really looking at how we can best use our resources to meet the needs of our customers and meeting the needs of the 80% so that we can be more proactive, as Joe has mentioned, around finding our silence, I suppose. Are there customers who are living and struggling in our homes that we don't know about? And I think that's really what's underpinning the tenant satisfaction measures. The regulator's been very clear that we need to understand our stock, which is the sort of data piece, and also understand the people behind the door. So this customer insight work is very much about us trying to understand more about the people who are behind our door, and how we can be more proactive, have a much better local presence on the ground, get to know people, carry out more tenancy visits, etc. The other thing that I just wanted to touch on was around our resident engagement. So we launched our resident engagement strategy earlier this year, and we're establishing a team which is sitting within our Community Investment Directorate. And this team is responsible for engaging with residents in a meaningful way so we've created a resident design team who will work with our customers. Sorry, I'm using tenant, customer and resident interchangeably. I'm referring to people who live in our homes, so that they can become involved to a level at which they're comfortable with or keen to become involved in terms of designing services, improving services, all of that transformation piece. We want to make sure that there's no barriers to that. So where we can encourage people to join us in terms of shaping our services, we do look at things like financial incentives, travel costs, etc., to make it easier for them to engage with us. The other thing to mention is that we have a resident academy, which is part of that Community Investment Directorate, and the academy is again very focused on bringing in residents who are really keen to get involved in different ways, so they can understand the pathways to, for example, joining our Customer Influence Committee, which is a paid non-executive director position, how they can get involved with the resident design work, whether they want to be on focus groups or panels. So I think collectively the customer insight and then the more meaningful engagement with our residents and customers is really helping to shape our plans and obviously improve our tenant satisfaction, which is the goal, and to make sure that everyone feels safe in their homes and that we're delivering good landlord services to them. Thank you for that. I'll hand it back over to Martin now.
Fabulous. Thank you very much for that. Sorry, just finding the mute switch. So yes, really great presentation. Lots of detail there, and loads of questions coming in from you as well. So please do keep them coming for the. We've got about 20 minutes left of the session, so an opportunity to really engage with you and address the issues that you're wrestling with in your own organisation. So yes, there's a significant number of questions to get through, and quite a range as well, because I think And one of the interesting things about this debate is we're talking about those kind of TSMs, tenant satisfaction measures, and coming kind of data collection going on for them, coming down the line, but actually also really at the heart of this is how we're improving the tenant experience. So we're talking about improving tenant satisfaction measures, but actually really at the heart of that, what that means is improving services, improving tenant experience. Yeah, that then feeding through into the system. So I think there's kind of two kind of themes emerging. Certainly people wanting to talk about tenant satisfaction measures and that side of things, but also the kind of tenant experience, the data that feeds into it all. So a reasonable amount to get through, and certainly a significant number of questions coming through to pick up on it. And I think yeah, we'll kick things off now with some of those questions. Questions about, I think probably in some themes, how data is being collected, how it's being pulled together, and I think let's start with one of those themes that is quite a common theme within the sector, and that is the quality of data available. So before we get to the tenant services side of things, the way people are doing things, what are the best methods to improve the quality of data? This is an audience question that's come in. We and this organisation says we have minimal emails, mobile phone numbers, so they're just struggling to wrestle with the quality of data. So if they're thinking about the services to their own tenants and residents, yeah, what's the best methods to improve that quality of data that you have available to you to inform your decision making? So Ian, how have you gone about that journey? I think we acknowledge that's a kind of problem within the sector generally. It's certainly a very common theme to come up. So let's kind of start with one of the big ones. Yeah, how do we improve that kind of quality of data?
I think there's probably four things I would say. One is, I think, collecting good data at the very start of the tenancy, once you've got that interaction piece with the customer. So we record it. We do lots of our SAMs now digitally, so we ask a whole range of information that feeds into our system. So collecting at the point of source is important. You're asking about phone numbers and emails. I think it's that discipline. Every time you have an interaction with a customer, can I just check I've got the right details for you? Do these details still exist? Are they still right? Lots of utilities companies do that all the time. There will be, I think there's going to be a need for an annual customer visit under the new regs. So again, using that opportunity every time you go out and visit a customer to make sure that you've got the correct details. Do you know who's living behind the door? Have you got all of their information? Has anything changed? And I think the final one is just that piece around colleague culture. If every time you have an interaction with a tenant, making sure that the details that you've got stored on the system are full and complete, and if there's anything missing, can you just take the opportunity to fill them in, no matter who you are, what job you're doing, provided you've got the correct equipment and you've got the right device with the correct facility to do so, either in the home or in an office or wherever you meet a customer, just making sure it's done. So it's everybody doing it all of the time and having that religious discipline to do it.
That really important point. So yeah, okay, the kind of religious discipline to do it. And Joe, I might bring you in next, because you were talking about that getting close to that Amazon experience. Again, data quality often raised as a problem within the sector, and yeah, I guess yeah, the best methods to improve the quality of data. But obviously, Amazon know an awful lot about you. It is a very personal experience, and that is based on the data they hold on you. So yeah, what's the best methods the sector can use, and you know, councils and housing associations can use to improve the quality of their data? I think we might have lost Joe. I'll just give you a second or two there. Joe, have we lost you? Yeah, looks like it. I'll bring Joe back in later if we get her back on the line. So Barbara, I'll bring you in on that question.
Sorry, Martin, it's been very slow. There I am.
Yes, I saw everybody's gone. It's just me. It's going to be.
How can we get close to creating the Amazon experience in a more personalised? I mean, I think it's fair to say we've got the same issues around data quality, and actually, to what Ian is saying, we're kind of taking the same approach around. It's more of an iterative thing around collecting quality data. I mean, I think my view is that if we can move towards that more personalised service, I can't see how it wouldn't improve our tenant satisfaction. Do you know what I mean? But equally, it's the sensitivity of it, because we obviously hold a huge amount of personal data. I know we've touched on GDPR, but we also hold a lot of very personal information in terms of people's, like when we're talking about antisocial behaviour and kind of vulnerabilities and all the rest of it. So I think there's a level of caution around really driving to that full Amazon experience, because there's sensitivities there. So I think you'd have to I think we collectively would have to think a lot about what that might look like. And obviously we're subject to freedom of information and subject access requests, etc.
And how are you drawing the line at the minute? Where are you putting those barriers in place? So this is as far as we can go. This is where we have to stop. I just wonder if there are any examples that perhaps people might want to think about themselves when they're.
I think in terms of what the information people can see about themselves online, it is limited to contact information and address, etc. So, for example, they wouldn't have access to a case file that showed how their ASB case is being managed or anything like that. So it's to do with all of the transactional stuff. I suppose I just think in terms of a personalised approach, if it was those sensitivities, that's where I'm not clear on how you could deliver a service digitally, where somebody could literally look up how their ASB case is progressing or something like that. There's a line for me there. I think that's what I'm talking about.
Thanks very much. And there's lots of additional questions coming through. Barbara, we'll come back to you shortly, because there's certainly some questions about the kind of segmentation as well, which we'll get to shortly. But I'll move on to another question. But Anthony, I'll ask you to come in on this one as well. Because I think this is what we know. This is one of the big issues that the sector is wrestling with. So data quality, certainly, if you can come in on that. And there's a very specific question for you. So I'll ask that at the same time. And that is on step 3 of your processes. Which platforms do you tend to recommend? So with the obvious proviso, others are out there. But Anthony, yes, over to you.
Yeah, thanks ever so much. So really good question. As I guess you might guess, we obviously work very closely in the space with a number of organisations within the social housing and property management space. So there's a couple of solutions within our portfolio that are really dedicated towards creating digital workflows and really automating that digital engagement and communications, which is really in the vein of the communications platform that I mentioned previously in the presentation. So, but they're ones that are typically used. But I think the way that we tend to operate at Quadient is really to have some dialogue and really understand what the needs are, because people's needs are different and therefore solutions are different. And what we tend to do is work with our clients and our prospects to really build something that's going to best meet their needs. So, if people are willing to have a conversation with us, we'll definitely make some good recommendations.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. And we've got. I'm going to move to a couple of other themes and hopefully get through a range of questions. There's a question coming in. Quite an interesting one from somebody who works for a London council leading the housing service. How have others helped customers share their insight based on their experience of tenancy management, rather than say how councils perform on highways, waste collection, etc.? Is it around branding the housing service? So I guess for councils, it's particularly when it comes to TSMs, for example, how you distinguish the housing service from the the rest of the service the council provides. Joe, I'm going to try you again in a second on that. But if Joe's not there, I think it's a wider point as well, because certainly around some of the neighbourhood type questions that the TSMs have, there are definitely questions that have been raised over periods of time about how you separate out, I guess, what the landlord can do about that and the wider neighbourhood and responsibilities of organisations like councils. So I think there's kind of in terms of that differentiation, I think that does apply, whether you're a council or a housing association or whoever. So Joe, are you on yet? We'll just give Joe a second, see whether we can get Joe back on. No, in which case, yeah, Ian, I'll move back to you on that one, just to see how you've differentiated yourself from the, if you like, the other players that may affect your scores in some of those TSMs.
No, it's a fair question. I mean, even though we are a housing association, we've still got stock transfers from many years ago, and some customers still believe they are council tenants. So it's, we're not immune to this. I think we do get intertwined. I think it's inevitable, and I think we're going to have to just accept some of it, because it is part of the environment in which customers live. We are doing more and more work with local authorities to be a good partner and to be clear about who's doing what. We do spend a lot of time on our communications and our branding in terms of being really clear about what we are as a landlord and what we can and can't do. However, I think this is one of the risks of the TSMs, or the TSM question. I think there inevitably will be some cross-fertilisation of people's views on whether it's our responsibility as a landlord or it's the responsibility of the council or another organisation. And I think what's going to probably be needed is, if customers have got individual issues, is spending time with them and their individual issues in their neighbourhood to resolve them, and being seen to be a positive partner who acts as an ambassador on their behalf and helps navigate through other organisations if that's what's required to reach a solution. But I think it's inevitable it's going to happen to some degree, and I don't think there's ever going to be a perfect way through this, because we've got mixed communities now, and inevitably this is going to be part of the challenge.
Thanks very much. Yeah, so really, I think, because I think I can certainly see where the question is coming from in terms of that kind of differentiation of the councils, but I think that's an issue for the majority of landlords. Barbara, there are a number of questions. We'll come back to Joe if we can get the audio working for her shortly. A number of questions about the personas that have come through, and I'll move on to them now. So I'm gonna kind of bunch them together. So I'll throw a couple at you at the same time, if that's all right. So for Barbara, two questions. One, when you mentioned personas, how many do you have, and how do you come up with them? And two, when you said you had an 80% preference for using digital, was that a breakdown of, was there a breakdown of preferences within that? For example, web-based or app-based, that kind of breakdown. And then a second question from another questioner. I'd be interested to know how the personas and segmentation work has enabled changes in how you deliver services for customers. What type of research went into building them? So a bit about how they work, and then a bit about how they deliver improvements to services. So Barbara, over to you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Martin. So there are 6 personas. I can name them. I don't know if they make a huge amount of sense. So things like deliver, flex, boost, reassure, assist. But essentially, and as I mentioned, Grand Union led on this, so they've definitely got the expertise in terms of the determinants. But for example, the deliver persona is what you kind of say is that most people within this persona are over 55. Have been tenants for a long time, are very comfortable financially, etc., and have a digital first preference and report very low levels of mental health conditions or health problems. You might move on to another persona, which is the flex, and that could be generally an older group who are struggling with repairs and that, because as their life has progressed, they're experiencing more medical or mobility problems. But again, financially, they're fairly secure and again, maybe low levels of kind of mental health conditions. And it kind of brings you through a kind of range of personas to what you might refer to as more vulnerable groups of customers. So we've got a nurture group, which is 10%, and they tend to be younger. They tend to be on their own. They tend to have present higher levels of unemployment, be struggling more financially, report really high levels of mental health issues like anxiety and depression, higher levels of cognitive conditions, etc. So it just gives a really, really strong insight. And it's not that we've like put a number beside each of our tenants on our records, because it's not about putting people in a box, but it helps us to work with so we've done a lot of work across the organisation to share this with everyone so that it can inform the way that they respond to customers who are presenting in certain ways. For example, if somebody's quite aggressive, at least we know that they're thinking, well, there might be reasons for that because they're particularly vulnerable for whatever reason. But yeah, so it is quite detailed though, so it's very difficult. I don't know how much detail people are interested. I'm certainly really happy if anyone wants to contact me after this and have a chat about it, because it is a really interesting piece of work.
Yeah, I would imagine people will be interested in a reasonable amount of detail there as well, because I've certainly been involved in a few discussions that involve Grand Union, and I know that the level of detail is incredibly interesting, and I think we're looking to pick up on that in Inside Housing in the new year with more detail as well. So yeah, thank you very much there. Right, we've got a few minutes left. So yeah, I'll run through a couple of other ones. Yeah, engagement with tenants is a problem in our organisation. Unattended appointments, not picking up phones to us. So that kind of getting tenants to engage with you to enable you to understand them better, provide better services. For all speakers, have you managed to improve engagement through any techniques you could share? So yeah, how can you go about doing that better? And are there any digital techniques perhaps that could enable you to increase your reach? So Anthony, I'll bring you on that first.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks again, Martin. Yes, I am here. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a big question, a very good question, and I think the simple answer to it is really about individual preferences. So, as we were talking earlier about capturing details such as contact information at the point of contract and maintaining that through the relationship, I think capturing preferences in terms of how people want to be communicated with is really vital in terms of this working. So, you know, what tends to happen in our experience with lots of organisations is that they communicate with their kind of audiences in the way that they wish to, rather than perhaps how their kind of stakeholders wish to be contacted with, and capturing that information up front, improving the engagement that you're getting with tenants. Really included that. So I think the other thing that's really quite important is people may often wish to be communicated with in different ways depending on the application. So how they wish to receive a tenancy agreement, for example, is very different. They want a reminder of something. So
well, you put up to this. The finishes that too.
I think would be our best advice.
Ian just had one or two specific questions for you that have come through. What do you think the principal driver has been in improving tenant scores from your digital offer? And in actual fact, there's another question which I'll just very quickly throw at you some very quick answers because we're just about out of time. An organisation or council that will soon be launching a digital tenant portal. What advice do you have in encouraging tenants to channel shift to digital first? So I think those two questions are quite closely aligned. So just to round off with answers to those, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem. I think it's very difficult to say something specific has driven greater satisfaction through digital. I think it's a whole mix of things. I think it's your entire brand, your service, your delivery, the culture of your colleagues. The whole experience drives that. So I don't think it's ever just one thing. So I think digital is just one alongside many, many other things. And I think that's sort of really important. It's never an individual thing. The second question, sorry, Martin, just remind me.
It was sorry. the principal driver in improving the tenant scores from your digital offer. I think yeah.
Yeah, I said we've tried to make it as easy as possible, and I saw the second question was about launching a portal for customers.
Yes, and how do you encourage that channel shift? Sorry, yeah.
Make it as easy as possible for people to use it. Make them want to use it because they'll get a better experience from doing so. Constantly push it in all of your communications, magazines, websites, through your colleagues, but make it very, very interactive, very simple, and very attractive. So do all the things that customers really want to do with you online and make it simple for them. But you've got to have a continuous push on it and try and introduce new products and services through it so people keep getting driven back to it to do more and more with it, would be my advice.
Fabulous, and yeah, great advice to round off on. I'm afraid we are out of time, just slightly over. So yeah, all that remains for me to do is to thank our panelists today for a really great series of presentations and a really interesting discussion. Thank you for all tuning in, and we've got through a significant number of questions, not quite all of them, but hopefully a range of the topics that were raised, and I hope that's been of use to you as well. And thank you to Quadient for sponsoring today and making today possible as well. So thank you all. Hope you've enjoyed, and see you all soon. Thank you.